Welcome back to the Millionaires Are Made podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Rule, soul-led, self-made, multimillionaire, business owner, investor, wife, mum of two, and your wealth mentor. Today, I am super excited. We're going to dive deep into one of my favorite topics, property. So, look, I've created and built a large portion of my wealth through property. So let's chat here to Corey Jones from Motivate Property Group. So Corey didn't come from money. He actually came from the Navy. So at 19 years old, after returning from the Middle East and serving in the Royal Australian Navy, a mentor showed Corey how to create real freedom through property. He took it seriously, he applied it, and he built his own multi-million-dollar property portfolio. So today, Corey has founded Motivate Property Group and he helps his clients achieve this too. So his mission is to replace his clients' income with property to give them back their time. So welcome, a huge welcome to Corey Jones. Welcome to the Millionaires Are Made podcast.
Thanks, Mish. Appreciate it.
Now, listen, before we dive in, let's just let the listeners know that you and I have known each other for a while. So Corey and I actually met over a decade ago. We were just coming up with the stats there. And, you know, meeting you was the beginning of my wealth journey. And, you know, you've had me on your podcast. It was one of my first moments there on a podcast. So now having this full circle moment where I'm dedicating pretty much 100% of my time to spreading the message of wealth because of not only what it's done for me and my family, but I know that without you speaking up and without me speaking up, you know, wealth doesn't get created in isolation and in silence. So first of all, thank you for that chance meeting a decade ago. And let's bring everyone up to speed on a little bit about your backstory first. So I think a really cool place to start, often you're meeting multimillionaires and you're thinking, wow, they've got it all figured out, they've got it sorted, but we didn't start with it sorted. We all have a story. I love to talk about money. I love to talk about the mindset of money on this podcast as well as the deep strategy required. So, you know, what's your story? What's Corey's story right from the beginning? What was money like? Did it play a big part in your life? And maybe bring us up to speed to the point where you're now here as the founder of Motivate Property Group.
Sweet. Well, firstly, Mish, thanks for inviting me. This is an honour. And seeing where we were 10 years ago versus where we are now, very inspiring. Very inspiring. And obviously today's conversation we'll get into that. So look, for me, I as you know, I was born in America. And I moved to Australia when I was like 5.5, turning 6, with a single mum, no money, and I didn't realize at the time what that even meant as a 5 and 6 year old. It wasn't until I went to school, public school, not an affluent area by any stretch, where I actually realized, holy shit, I'm actually the poor kid here, right? And I'll give you some examples. So, you know, being from America, obviously, you know, that sort of pop culture, like having Nike shoes was a massive thing.
Yeah.
Like I was wearing Kmart shoes. Like I couldn't afford that. Like that was like a dream as a kid to have not like Nike shoes. I specifically remember one night, I was probably like 5 or 6. We were at Kmart and my mum had a conversation with me. She was like, hey Corey, you know, if you really want to play, you know, footy this year, I can get you some footy boots like in Kmart, or I can get myself some slippers for winter. And that's when I realized, holy shit, like we're poor. Like this is actually like I that was kind of the moment for me where I realized, number one, how important money actually is.
Yes. Number
2, we don't have that.
Yeah.
So it's like money is really important. We don't have any crap. Like something's wrong here. And that for me was kind of really where I became a lot more aware of like our sort of status, for lack of a better way to put it, as compared to everyone else around me. And fundamentally, that is probably one of the main things that lit the fire up underneath me.
Wow.
More than anything. And obviously, you know, as time went on, you know, my mum met my stepdad. You know, now there was 2 incomes for the household. You know, we were able to upgrade home. Like, you know, there was some really good things that they sort of did together. But again, still very much in the working class. And so when I was in that sort of tail end of high school, same question: what do you want to be when you grow up? Now, listening to my parents, it was a case of, you know, go to university, because they never went to uni, right? So be the first one to go to uni, right? So I went to uni just to do what my mum told me to do. Hated it. So I dropped out and I joined the Navy. And again, the thing for me was, you know, everyone's telling me money's not important. Everyone's telling me that, you know, money's irrelevant. You should just do something you're happy with. And then when I was in the Navy, spending my time at sea, spending my time overseas, it came pretty evident as a you know, late teens, early 20s, like, holy shit, like, money is actually really freaking important. Like, if you actually legitimately want to do the things in life that you want, the more that you resist money is the factor of you doing it or not, the more you're going to suffer.
Wow.
And that was where, for me, and a part of the mindset, Mish, is actually, like, the first part of it is actually just being open to something more. And so because I was open, there was opportunities that just kind of came about. And there weren't opportunities that were really prepared. It was just sort of just flashed in front of my face. I was open to it. I took it. And then the rest is just history, you know, and the rest is turned into, after hard work and taking action and doing this and doing that, we're here. But I can definitely see where part of the problem for most people is they're just not even open at the beginning, because they've been sold money's not important. They've been sold that, you know, happiness is more important than really anything else. And while there is an element of truth in that, just to be clear to start with, I'm not saying money makes you happy. Money's a tool.
Yes.
You know, and at the end of the day, the more tools you've got at your disposal, the more options you're going to have. And the better chance that you can make yourself happy and everyone else around you happy. And that's fundamentally sort of where it sort of started.
Gosh, I love this so much because, you know, potentially people could look at, oh, you've got the multi-million-dollar life now or portfolio or whatever. And even you and I were talking prior to this podcast that we still feel like we're just at the beginning. But the key thing is it's the mindset behind that. So not growing up with money and potentially hearing the story from parents. And even with my last guest, we were talking about this because really, whether it's one generation or two generations back, there was lack. We've come from some type of lack, most of us, right? We haven't come from that generational wealth. Now, whether or not our parents, with what they had available to them, they want to protect us and let us know that don't worry, money's not important, just, you know, we've got this. But what that can potentially do is then cap you off from your potential of millions. So for you, you know, what a blessing that you were able to see, okay, well, I don't currently have, but I'm going to allow a crack to open for me to think, well, hang on, how can I? And what would that even look like? And taking that first step. Now, you've come from America. What age did you come here? Because I do talk about Australians and money in a particular way, because I think we have this tall poppy syndrome here in Australia. We like to see people win to a certain extent, and the Aussie battler is certainly there. And I'm proud of the heritage that we have here. You know, my pop came from Italy over from after the war. He was a prisoner of war. Like, there was severe lack, and we came to this country for opportunity. And I'm so blessed at everything that it's given us. But, you know, I guess at what point were you aware that you were able to change and to create money, or, you know, which point in your life? And was it coming back from the Navy and all of those experiences where you thought, hang on a minute, I'm going to have a crack at this? Was it an actual decision? Can you remember or talk us through what that time was like?
Absolutely. So I think, and this is just my own experience, right? When you take a normal person off the street and say, hey, you know, you've got the ability to be a millionaire at some point, most of them would laugh at you, or they would have this kind of sense of like disbelief. That's just not for me. It's just not possible. The problem is their view is where they're at. They're seeing themselves in the sky, and it's like they can't see the bridge. Half the battle is just seeing a pathway, right? And what do I mean when I say it? So when I moved here, when I was 5.5, 6, coming from America, and look, to be fair, where I came from, let's just say my mum brought me here for a reason, and I'm glad that she did, because it's just a much better environment. Not to knock the US, but just where I was from, there's just a lot of crime, bad spot. So when we came here, like one of the things that I noticed even from my stepdad is tall poppy syndrome is a thing in Australia. When I talk to people in America and my family, my brother, and say, hey, we're going to start a business, he's like, fuck yeah, man, that's awesome. Like, you go for it. When you have that same conversation with Australians, it's, are you sure? But and again, it's this in like, it is that kind of like convict culture, right? Of anyone who steps up, everyone else is going to get punished, and that's that. There is this kind of level of how do I put it? That's like embedded into our society, and it's one of those ones that unfortunately is a cultural glass ceiling that we're putting on ourselves. And it's one of those ones that when you're living inside that, you are constrained, and chances are you're not going to reach your potential because society's told you can't.
Yeah.
I think fuck that.
Exactly. And it's an identity piece as well. Yep. You see, there needs to come a point where we can either identify with the Aussie battler, and that used to be me. I was proud of how hard I worked to get my uni degree, and I was proud of, all the overtime in the office and struggling and, not barely being able to put petrol in my car. And, and even in my early 20s, I ended up getting into credit card debt because I was just ignoring money. I actually didn't even like it. I didn't want to talk about it. I thought it was so just distasteful for people to be speaking about money. But here I am. I literally spend my entire day having money conversations. And the reason that I do is because we need to actually open up to a brand new identity around money, empower ourselves with it, realize that we're actually disempowering ourselves by being angry at it, saying I'd prefer to struggle, and being that Aussie battler. It's not discounting where we came from. And, like I said, with our parents, they were struggling and there was real lack. But it's about realizing how to be smart with the opportunity that you've got. You've got so much opportunity right now. We need to seize it. We need to take it because, maybe we'll get into this a bit later, but this generation is where it's at. This generation right now, if you're listening to this podcast right now, what a privilege. You've got access to so much information. So my role and my job, hopefully I'm doing a good job at it, is to get the information out there, help people break out of potentially that poverty mindset and realize that you can be a good person and still accumulate millions of dollars.
And do good by people.
The more you have, the more you can give.
100%.
Amazing. So, okay, so we've overcome the story that you've come from. There's a deciding point. You're back from the Navy. You've met a mentor who starts talking about property. Much the same as you and I. My husband actually met you at a business networking event. At the time, we just had our son and he was, I think, about 4 months old. And my husband and I had started talking about what the future would look like for him. Like, we have a business. We're creating cash, but we are on this income cycle. We make it, we spend it. We make it, we spend it. We only had the capacity to think about paying off a mortgage and saving super. And this is a trap that I talk about a lot, the pay off your mortgage and save your super. And I'm not saying it's the worst thing in the world, but I'm saying we can do better than that. So for me, we actually met you at the perfect time and you popped on over and you were talking about property. But for you, you had a mentor as well, somebody that spoke property. So what was that conversation like? And was there a leap of faith where you were listening to what he was saying about your potential to build wealth?
Yep.
And what made you decide to just have a crack?
Yeah, good question. So I guess for me, it started in the Navy. I remember I was out at sea. We're on deployment in the Middle East. It was actually the navigator of the ship. So he's one of the highest officers on board. The dynamic with sailors and officers, they're kind of like the managerial class, let's call it, and then we're the grunts, for lack of a better way to put it. So this guy was talking about how he owned multiple properties, and he would sort of brag about it, basically. And I'm sitting here thinking, hang on a second, how does this guy have multiple houses? This doesn't make sense. Like, people just buy one house. Like,
yes.
We've got one house. Like, I don't understand how this guy has gone and bought 3, 4, 5, however many he purchased. Now, on the ship, he's actually got an assistant who's in the same sort of job as what I do. He was just like the next rank up. He also had multiple properties because of
Really?
what he saw him do, like the navigator do. And when I knew what income he was on, $5,000 more than me per year, and he had multiple properties, I'm like, hang on, how? Like, what the hell's going on here? Now, at the end of the day, these guys were still very much in their early phases of their strategy. So like they didn't really have the ability to kind of sit me down and sort of explain it. All they did was show me that, hey, there's something here. Now, I consider that as almost like priming. All that did was just prime my brain for it.
Seed planting.
That was it, right? So for me, it didn't give really any tangible solutions to latch onto and put into practice. All it gave me was, hang on, there's something here in property. There's an opportunity. No idea what it is, but I'm open to it. There was a sequence of events that happened when I got back to the Middle East. When you're away, particularly in an active war zone, like you don't pay tax. So I came back from sea. You spent 6 months away, no tax. I think I had like $70,000 saved up.
Yeah, well done.
Now, being 19, 20 at the time, there was multiple sailors on board who this was like their third or fourth trip, and the previous trip they blew all that money on a car. One for that was on a holiday. One for that was on a wedding, and so there are literally guys deploying over and over again because they are pissing this money up a wall. I'm not doing that, and I absolutely refused. And so spoke to my parents. They said, go buy a house. Spoke to my friends. Some of them were saying, oh, you should start a business with it or invest in shares with it. The point is like everyone at the time was telling me something different. None of them were wealthy. Why the hell am I listening to them? Like, and this is sort of, and in hindsight, this is actually probably one of the wisest things I've ever said to myself. Why am I listening to these people? I love them. They want to keep me safe. They want to do the right thing by me, but they're not remotely where I want to be. And so this is when I started to do my own research. So I started reading books on, wealth and money and mindset and investing. And, do I invest in, the stock market? Do I invest in this? Do I invest in that? And so long story short, I actually stumbled into a workshop at one point. It was a wealth creation workshop. Turns out that was actually really about property investment. That was the night where, well, I put it, my vision just exploded. Because again, I was open to the idea.
Yes.
Had no idea what, and then that night, all the seeds kind of fell.
Something you could latch onto.
100%.
Yeah.
There was a few lessons in that I still take with me every day. The first lesson is when we consider the wealthy and the poor, all right? And when I say that, I know that these terms are quite loaded, right? And there's a lot of people can go a lot of ways with it, right? The distinction fundamentally for me, the wealthy have the ability to choose what they do with their time. The poor don't. Now, there are people who might earn $1 million a year. If you're working 14-hour days, you can't see your kids, your family hates you, mate, you're just as poor as people who are earning $50,000 a year doing the same thing. And so the first lesson was assets are always more important than income. That is the first rule of money. When I saw that, I was like, well, this all makes sense now. Of course, that's why they want to buy property, because the idea is instead of focus on income, we focus on assets and asset accumulation, big portfolios of property, shares, super cash, gold, bonds, everything, because that fundamentally is the only thing that's going to give you time freedom.
Amazing. The only true passive wealth, income, money creation is the asset class, assets.
Yeah.
Like let that land.
Yeah.
So really so much energy and attention on getting the wage and the income and all of that. Okay, great. We need the cash, but hang on a minute. Let's have the asset conversation.
Yeah.
That's where things get really interesting. Yeah. So you're at this workshop. They're talking about assets. Corey's thinking, I know some guys from the Navy that have been purchasing property. There's something here for me. Did you dive straight in? Did you just say, let's go? Basically,
yeah. So basically, at the end of that night, I became a client of that business, was working with them and started investing through them. I ended up working there.
Yeah.
So then I obviously, when I left the Navy and discharged, my options were go back to uni, which I just did not want to do. Do I get a job in the mines somewhere that I can walk into an entry-level role with Defence Force sort of history? Do I press in with the Navy and the military now and just keep going down this road and get promoted in higher ranks and sort of move upwards? Or do I find something completely different? And so, this role that they sort of had on offer was a very high risk, high reward role. For me, it was a case of, if I do this, I'm burning the boats.
Wow.
So I had a partner at the time. We had a mortgage. I had to basically start from scratch. And it was one of those ones where, in a lot of the sales roles in property, they are commission-based roles.
Yeah.
So it's either you're going to make commission or you're not. And so for me, it was a case of, I'm going to remove all other options out of my mind. This is the only thing that's going to be here. And I just went hard.
What a killer mindset, honestly. Burn the boats. I talk about this as well. It's like there is only plan A. There is no plan B, because that conviction of I am going to make this happen. And it's not saying we have everything mapped out perfectly, but the actual decision, that decision energy that I talk about, that is the very first step. Because if you haven't really decided, you're going to find a million reasons why, you're going to pick it apart, like all the little tiny issues you can see with it. But if you've decided, you've burnt the boats, you're saying, here's somebody handing me an opportunity. Now I'm smart. I can see an opportunity. I've had enough seed planting where I've put 2 and 2 together. There's something in it. I'm going to burn the boats. I'm going all in, and we're going to do this. Right. And now what that would have been 10, 12, 15 years ago.
We're talking, 11 years ago now.
11 years ago.
Yeah.
So for anyone listening that might still be in those early stages, this is 11 years and multi-millions because of a decision that was made to burn the boats.
Yeah.
That is what it boils down to. Those singular moments, whether that is that intuitive hit of, or whatever that divine inspiration of, I'm doing this and I'm going to do this and I'm all the way in. So I want to talk a bit more about the early stages with property, and I also then want to talk a bit about Motivate Property Group. But so after you've made the decision, talk us through it. We've purchased one property. Are we having the wobbles? Are we figuring it out? What does that feel like in the early stages of investing in property?
So to be completely honest with you, I was very naive, as we all are, right? I blindly trusted this company. And because I was now working for them and was in the trenches with them, I could see that I was a lot more comfortable than, say, if I was just someone on the outside, all right? Now, the idea of working with a business like that, or even with Motivate, the idea is we kind of do the work for you. So rather than having to work out how to do research, how to find property, how to negotiate it, how to secure it, how to do the finance, how to do the idea is, hey, I'm just going to let experts just kind of take care of it all. So in that sense, it was actually a very easy solution to get into the market, and it was actually a very easy solution to start building wealth without having to be the expert, right? And that's like a lot of stuff you say, you actually rely on the experts,
right,
to just do their thing. And that's why we have them, right? And, there is an argument to say that if you try and be a jack of all trades versus working with a guy who specializes in just that, he's going to get you better results. And at the end of the day, what we want is the outcome. We want the result, So for me, I learned a lot. And because, again, I was in the role, I had to learn not only how to do the job, but I also had to learn how to be an investor at the same time. And while those two things at the time sort of went hand in hand, there are always mistakes, right? And even now, I say this to my team all the time. The first house that I bought was the worst financial decision I ever made.
I love the honesty.
And to be I still have that property today.
Yeah.
That property today is still my worst performing property by far. And I bought it with emotion. I bought it in an area where I grew up. I bought it in Kenwick, right?
What we know. Yeah, we move to what we know, what's familiar.
Right. Exactly. Near my parents, near where I grew up. If I ever need to move back into it, I can.
Right. All the emotional reasons why to start.
And all of it is nonsense, by the way, right? All of it has just been absolutely irrelevant. It's just, again, part of the way that we justify it to ourselves, right?
Yes.
Emotionally, right? But, I'll never forget this again. So I was about to buy my first house in Canning Vale. All right. So it was a house and land, talking to a builder. It was a 600 square meter block with a massive 4x2 with a theatre for $299,000.
Got the theatre. Yep.
And I chickened out.
Right.
All right, chickened out. And so instead I bought this, older established property in Kenwick because it's familiar, it's established, blah, 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 blah. So the Kenwick property, thanks to the booming market in Perth, yes, it has doubled in the last 5 years. If I had bought that house in Canning Vale, it would have tripled by now. It would have already doubled before COVID. So it's like looking at what I was about to buy and I didn't versus what I did buy that I was comfortable with, it would have completely outperformed like 2 to 3 times. And so again, that's a very good lesson.
Exactly.
Right? Of buying the wrong asset purely with emotion, with all the wrong intentions, having no real idea what I was doing, versus now what I know. Obviously, not only do we, if I sort of done this role for 11 years, but I now train people and coach people, and we do this for our clients every day. So what I know now versus what I know at the beginning, miles apart. Like anyone in a really good career, but at the end of the day, like what I find, and this is where I find a lot of people go wrong, it isn't about what you know. And in a lot of cases, it's not even who you know, because you can find those people. It's how bad do you want it and what are you going to do for it? Most people know of someone who works in, say, property, or someone knows a stockbroker. Like most people know people who are, and yet there's no measure, there's no proactive measure that you're taking to actually go and try and seek advice from that person or gain some help. Like, teach me.
Or even to just take action. It's such a massive part of it. And I like what you say, even in the beginning, if you feel like you look back and think, well, they weren't the best, wasn't the best choice, or I didn't know what I was getting myself into, or I was naive and I was just jumping. Show me any success story that doesn't start out that way, because it truly is in the courage to actually follow through, and whether or not it's going to be the perfect thing. Like the worst thing we can do is analysis paralysis, where we've, and I see this from highly intelligent women, and I know that I work with a lot of these women, and they mean well, they want to do their research, and I think that's great and that's sensible, and we want to get second opinions, of course, but at some point, we're not going to have the magic formula. We're not going to have the crystal ball that says this particular thing's going to do this. But what we do know is by doing nothing, that is our greatest opportunity cost. You are going to, burn money by doing nothing. So really, I love the vulnerability and honesty, and like, hey, a couple of the earlier purchases, maybe you would have done this instead of that, and now you live and learn, and how incredible you've got 11 years of data and history and learning, and now you're able to help clients with this. But the fact that you actually moved on it is everything. Mm-hmm. And now, so let's even talk a bit now about Motivate Property Group. So grateful for the work that you do. And back to the story of how we met. So my husband had met you at a networking event and we were looking to invest, and in comes Corey talking about property. I'm just trying to think what our ages must have been then. If it's a decade ago, like we were young, right? And even in that moment, I remember talking to my husband about it afterwards and saying, okay, so, just met Corey. He's saying, invest in this property, and we're looking at it and we're thinking, do we do this? Do we do? Same with business ownership and anything. You're making decisions on the daily. Where's the perfect answer? Where's the crystal ball? Now I've got parents saying, what are you doing? Go buy the dream home in City Beach. Don't go buying something off the plan over the other side of Australia that you've never seen, because that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to start building out a portfolio we're going to hold on to for the long term. But we did the thing. Your neighbour's saying this. Everybody's got an opinion. But the thing is, have they achieved what you want? And this is not to say that they've gone on to achieve incredible things, but had they had their success through the way that I was ready to have success, they had not yet. Property wasn't their thing. Yep. So we took the leap. I'm glad we did. One of the key things, I don't know if I've ever told you this as well, one of the key things when we first met that made me think, okay, we're going to do this. Do you want to know what it is?
Sure.
So I said, all right, well, why are we buying, this particular house? And you said, well, look, you can buy there or you can buy there. I've currently bought there. I've bought for my parents there, and it's a great choice, and we can do that. And I sort of thought, well, all right, you believe in it. You've got your parents investing in that area. Like, how much more evidence do we need? Somebody's offering you an opportunity, freaking take it. Take it. a few years later, and it's turned out to be the most incredible. Like we had 2 over there. We've now got 5 properties. We're still purchasing with you, and we're just, there's no plans to stop. We're just going to expand the portfolio, because once you see, and this is what only hindsight can give us, is once you see the data and once you've lived it and you understand the process and it's working for you, of course, then you can say, yeah, this is working, let's do it. But in the beginning, look, it's going to feel a little bit either risky or uncertain. Like, let's normalize that.
Yep.
Let's normalize the fact that we've got to have a crack.
Yeah. 100%.
Because, it's actually so much worse just not even moving on it. So amazing. So let's talk Motivate Property Group for a bit. And I'm fascinated to know, like, what is it like out there with clients that are coming to you? I was just speaking with a financial planner, and I'm a huge believer that, yes, we empower ourselves to build the portfolio, but let's be smart about it. Let's get the best people in the right seats to sit around the table with us and to create that vision of wealth that we have for our life. So that's going to look like we need some experts. So Motivate Property Group, where do they fit in the wealth creation package? Somebody that's thinking, all right, property, what do they need to have ready before they come see you? Just all of it. Like, who are the people that you can help, and how do you do that?
Yeah. No, great question. So, I mean, for the most part, like our sort of bread and butter are like mums and dad investors. And keep in mind, that's where most people generally start from. All right. Rarely do we have someone who's already worth 20, 30 million come to us and need our assistance. They're already kind of doing the thing, if that makes sense. So most of our clients are your mums and dads, either starting out with just a home with some equity. It might be a first home buyer looking to buy their first house, just like what I did back in the day. It could be someone who might have, home and investment, but no idea how to go and start scaling and sort of going from there. So I'd say it's probably 90% of our clients in those sort of 3 categories. At the end of the day, property, while there are nuances and it can be quite complex, it's also quite simple. All right. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is simple. Like I started the business, I'll be honest, I didn't really plan on being a business owner. Even to this day, I kind of resent it still.
I love the honesty.
And that's just...
We're all a bit psychotic business owners.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to have a level of insanity to do the work.
Yeah. And look, dealing with people and stuff and, all the things that business owners have to do. And, it's like you look at a business and you think, oh, one day when I'm in your position, I'm going to be living the dream. I'm not living the dream, right? Well, look, in some ways, but like there is also this thing of like you don't understand how actually difficult it is until you're doing it. Mm-hmm. And then you realize, holy shit, like I understand now the risk and what I'm putting into this. I mean, yes, I did a 15-hour day.
Yeah.
That's normal for me.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot that goes into it. But the way I see it, like a business is designed to solve a problem. And if you're not solving a problem, you're not going to be in business very long. That's the first thing. The problem that we solve is human slavery. Now, again, when I say that, it's a very loaded term. People think people in chains. We're basically doing that today. This is just the modern day version of it. The way that I see it, Mish, and this is I guess sort of one of the context of where I'm coming from. I have the belief that if you're investing correctly, you should be able to replace your income within 15 years.
Amen.
So what that looks like, if you enter the workforce at 20 and you invest correctly at 20, by 35 you should be able to retire and never have to work again. Notice that's not how the world works. The world works as you enter the workforce at, say, 20. We want to work you until 60, 65, 67
Right.
soon
Wow.
to be 70, 50 years of your life. And then you can sort of retire in your golden years with what you've put aside, right? So like the like anyone can do this. It's not that complicated. It is quite simple.
I love how you put that as well, though, because I'm doing the math, 15 years. And, for anyone that thinks, how in 15 years, my journey started a decade ago, 10 years ago. And we did it in 10. Mm-hmm. We reached that financial freedom number where my asset base now is growing at the rate that I don't need to spend the difference. So if I wanted to, can hang up my hat. I tried that for a year or two after I had my second child. I got bored. Okay, so hence I'm on a podcast now, doing something productive with my life, because I do believe that we might still want to serve, but what a freeing way of looking at it. So you're helping people break out of the chains of being strapped to a job or an income treadmill that they're not fully fulfilled in. And whether they choose to go on and create another business or travel the world or share their message or whatever they want to do with their life, the fact that they get to choose, incredible.
Well, I mean, I've said this to you before. I mean, you fundamentally are the goal, for what our business is trying to do, and again, like in my experience, most people understand that really what they want is to serve. Really what they want,
Agreed.
like what truly satisfies and fulfills us is actually serving others, right? And whether it's evolution or biology, whatever, like insert the blank.
Even all the mums out there, we are serving families, our kids, our communities, however that looks.
Absolutely.
But to be able to do that without this restriction. Now, it's interesting because I preach money and I love value to flow back to you. I love to be able to monetize your natural gifts and skills and talents. And if there is a way for that to happen, but there's a lot of other things that I do that where money doesn't flow back. And I think what a beautiful way to be. So we actually are preaching money to the point where you don't need to worry about money. That's the whole point, right? So you're saying 15 years, someone comes to you, if they can give you 15 years, stick to the plan, the rest of their life is theirs.
Exactly. And then you can spend your time doing what the way that you actually want to serve the planet. And for you, this is it.
Yeah, it really
is. And it's amazing work. And so, I don't know, I've said this to you a bunch of times. Like, if we could wrap up what you've done, so you've taken the leap of faith, you've invested heavily, you've within 10 years, well, I think it was like 7 or 8
I
for
know,
you.
it
Like
was less.
within an incredible short period of time, you're now in a position where you don't have to be chained to that desk and that boss. You can now spend your time focused on what you actually like, how you want to serve the world. Like, that's the goal. That's what I built the company for, right? And don't get me wrong, it's running business sucks. And most of the listeners to this, female business owners, like, these ladies are in the friggin' trenches right now with us. And it's one of the most challenging things to possibly do. But even with our conversation, and if you don't mind, I remember our very first meeting at your house in Craigie. And the thing that struck me at the time, because I remember you guys were so focused on the business.
Yeah.
And I understand, again,
it was our lifeline.
That's the tunnel vision, and you need that. And, that was an example where if we start using some of that profit and put it into other portfolios on the side to help solidify this foundation that you guys are building, and fundamentally just that's where the empire started, right? Let's say something happens to the business, you've now got a property portfolio that actually stacks up. You've then got a share portfolio over here. You've got all these different asset classes. So if one thing falls to pieces, everything else can kind of still hold you forward.
Business is risky, and every single business owner that I speak to, I have this conversation. We need the plan. We don't need to put all our eggs in the business basket. It's high risk, high return. What if something happens? And I also can't emphasize enough how that has reduced the pressure for my husband and for myself. As we've been building this business, we've been able to take more risk and also feel more confident in our ability to say that we've got this, because business has looked rocky over the years. There's been years that, in the early days especially, can't take a wage. You're trying to make payroll, right? You're doing all the things that business owners do. And I know for he and I, because we talk about our net wealth a lot, we have, money meetings every month, or now it's sort of stretching out because we've got it. We know what we're doing now. But the amount of pressure that has been lifted from him, knowing it's covered, it's sorted, the asset base is growing. And every time I open that net wealth map and I say, hey, babe, this is where we're at. This is how it's grown this year. And he's like, sweet. We've got this sorted. So we're still going ham in business. And the funny thing is, because you're now not in that survival mode, you're actually incredibly more effective at every aspect of your life.
100%.
We're taking the trips with the kids, like we're living life. And I know that's where your heart is at as well with your clients in terms of how you're able to help them. Yeah.
And I mean, to that point, I mean, I've had to go and draw equity out twice to keep Motivate afloat at certain points.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like if I hadn't have built a portfolio, I mean, think of this, and I was thinking about this a lot, right? Let's say I had started Motivate from scratch, which I did, but I had no backing.
Mm-hmm.
There would have been 2 different occasions where
Yep.
I would have had to sell shares to keep things afloat.
Mm-hmm.
But because I'd built a portfolio, I can just borrow my own money, have my portfolio now fund the business to make payroll and X, Y, and
Yes.
Z. I didn't have to. I was going to say bend myself over. That's a bad way to put it. I didn't have to sell my soul, you know, in a lot of ways. And I actually had the portfolio as a means of strengthening the business.
Right.
And this is one of the things that I do tell people sort of oversee and the power of this, because, you know, think about, and this is for the listeners, right? Let's say you were to start your business again from scratch today with nothing versus you start your business again today with $2 million in equity across your portfolio. You are starting a very different business. You're going to have way more capital. You're going to have way more, money to fund into your marketing and sales to start building things. You'll have way more to invest in your actual product or service. Like, you will get so much stronger results if you've got the ability to actually fund yourself. And that's where, again, you've got way more options versus, say, being stuck in that one job.
Gosh, agreed. And even just the mental aspect of that, it's like something in your back pocket. You know you've got it there. So you can actually tolerate a higher risk,
100%.
knowing that if I have to deploy it, I've got me, versus, yes, operating out of scarcity, which is just so incredible.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about property on a deeper level for a bit. Like, I want to know, because people come to me and they're like, Michelle, is it property? Is it shares? Is it gold? Is it crypto? Is it, you know, to me, I say, I'm heavily invested in property. I love property. I've got 5 of them. It makes up over 5 million of our asset base. I'm grateful for the opportunity of property. I also have a bit of crypto. I've got some shares, got some super going on. You've got a few other things there, but property in particular, because you are the king of property. So let's talk about what you specifically love about property, maybe what you're currently seeing out there in the property market. Why property for you versus any other asset class? And I'm not saying it's exclusively that, but why do we love property?
Yeah, great question. This question is probably one of the most important questions. Now, just as a little background, like I obviously run a company called Motivate Property, so what I'm going to say is going to be heavily biased. Just want to put that out there. Like, at the end of the day, I invest in everything. So I've got 8 businesses, last time I counted, share portfolios, property portfolio. Like, I invest in, I'm the sort of person, I will never sit in front of a client and tell them not to invest in something.
Yes.
And if property's not suitable, great. Invest in something.
Yeah.
Just get your money in the market, right? Now, at the end of the day, all asset classes are good. They all make money. The thing that people don't understand is they've all got different pros and cons based on what you need to do.
Agreed.
Now, with that said, it is my view, property, even with the latest budget, even with all the changes they're trying to make, property in Australia is the best vehicle for growth and the best vehicle for wealth creation, right? And I stand by that fact. Now, the reason why I say that so confidently is because of a thing called leverage, all right? Leverage is a tool of the wealthy. The leverage that property provides, no other asset class can provide that. All right. And there are 2 things when I say leverage. The first one's the obvious one. When people talk about, say, for example, property and shares, they'll say things like, oh, but if I buy an investment property, there's all this now debt I've got to associate with it in terms of mortgage, and I've got to now muck around with a tenant. They've got to do the right thing, and then I can get my 8% return. Whereas if I go and put that same amount of money into, say, the stock market, there's no tenants, there's no debt, and that's going to make me a 10% return, and therefore I'm making more money. Mm-hmm. Well, yes, that's true. However, you're not taking into consideration leverage. See, the first part of leverage, and this is the obvious part, is $100,000 invested in a property. That's the deposit. Mm-hmm. But you're using that $100,000 to buy a $500,000 asset.
Yeah.
Now it's a $500,000 asset growing at 7%. Versus when you buy shares, you can use that $100,000 to buy $100,000 worth of shares. It's $100,000 now growing at 10%. So
gosh, I love this.
When you look at those sort of dollar on dollar returns, property, because of leverage, is a lot stronger.
Right.
But there is one more thing that's actually more important than that. And it's the fact that property is the only asset you can leverage further. That is the key. All right. There is one thing you guys take away. That is the most important thing when it comes to property. And that is the main reason why it is by far the best wealth creation vehicle. Now, what that means, you've done this, I've done this. I can say, hey, I bought this house at, say, $500,000. It's now worth $1 million. So I've made 500 grand of equity. Property is the only asset that I can now go and use that equity, not have to sell the asset. I can take that 500 grand and I can go and reinvest it into something else, whether it's more properties, more shares, super, gold, bonds, businesses, crypto, doesn't matter. I've used equity, as I said, to help build the business.
Mm-hmm.
I've used my equity to buy villa in Bali. I've used it to invest in stocks. Like I've drawn equity out and gone and dumped it in the stock market. So the point is, you can't do that with other asset classes. You can't go to the bank and say, hey, bank, you see my $1 million in shares?
Yes.
I want to borrow money against these shares and go and use it to buy crypto. They're going to say, no. You can go and sell those shares and exchange it, pay capital gains tax and all the fees to get in and out. And you're essentially exchanging it rather than expanding. If you went to the bank and try this, say to them, hey, bank, here's my $3 million I've got in crypto. And watch how fast they won't secure anything against that.
Right.
They're going to tell you, no, we're not going to touch your crypto. What properties do you have that we can secure the money against?
Mm-hmm.
That is the key to property. That is why, in my mind, it is by far the best vehicle for wealth creation. Now, does that mean that we always invest in property? No. Right? What all it means is that's the foundation of the strategy. So what I teach my clients, and fundamentally, the strategy really breaks up into three phases. Phase one, we want to build the largest portfolio with the least amount of your income and get growth. It's all about growth.
Mm-hmm.
Property in Australia is not a cash flow asset. All right. Now I'm talking residential, by the way. Commercial is, residential is not. That's why, in Australia, you can rent cheaper than you can buy. That's why when you go to places like the US, you go to other markets around the world, like it's more to rent than it is to own. Here it's the opposite. We're one of the only countries in the world where it's the opposite. So for here in Australia, they grow really, really well. The cash flow is terrible, right? But we're using it for growth.
Exactly.
So house that buys the house, that buys a house, that buys a house. All of a sudden we've got 4 or 5 houses, and then all we do is let the market just do the work, all right? And it goes from, and we've seen this, right? I mean, when we first bought those properties in Brisbane, they were in the 400s.
Yeah.
Now they're in the 900s, plus $1 million.
I tipped over $1 million when
There
I
you
looked
go.
at the other day, and I thought, there you go.
Right.
In action. And could have I bought at the time 50K of shares or use that 50K at the time to go get the $400,000 property, which is now $1 million. So, when we see these micro decisions compounded over time, that's where the real wealth is built. We really can't underestimate that. And I love that you talk about leverage as well. My clients, get sick of me talking about leverage, but I'm like, once you've seen it in action, that is the gameplay. The gameplay is he or she who has the largest asset base wins. Have you ever played a game of Monopoly? Who is winning that game? And it's the person that owns the most asset.
Yep.
The cash flow part, it's an important part to understand, and we need to be able to manage the cash flow on these properties that we're purchasing, but it's not a cash game. It's a how do I grow my wealth game.
Absolutely.
And so for us, we've gone through the growth space. We've got the 5 properties now, and the last property we just purchased over in Queensland, again, that one was a dual key. So we're now starting to look at, okay, a bit higher cash flow on that one. It entered the market positively geared, like ready to go. So that's available, still got the asset base growing, and now we're thinking, okay, this equity now, you got 5 properties, now that's snowballing. Because if you thought the growth on one property was great, well, what happens when you've got 10, right? Everything starts to really amp up and speed up. Yeah. And so at that point now you are having decisions, okay, do we want to go commercial, or like what's the goal here? Are we still growing it out, or sky's the limit?
Absolutely.
But to start off, and I love this, for me, starting off in property was a game changer because it allowed me to see real growth in a short-ish amount of time. And this is not instant, because the first few years properties did nothing. It's very tempting to just bow out and sell them. Anyone who's getting into whichever market right now, and even Perth's had excellent growth lately, but I'm like, we're playing the long game here. I'm not selling any of my properties. That's the family empire right there. I'm holding on to that. So, not even looking at this as a short-term play, but a long-term play and building out that empire. Absolute game changer.
Yep.
So I love this. And we haven't even touched on the fact that, we've got this thing called inflation, or the debt that we're holding. I mean, inflation and debt.
Mm-hmm.
Why do because people talk about inflation, maybe what they know about it, depending on where you're at, it's like, okay, so that just means things are getting more expensive over time. Yep. Okay. What is it doing, however, to the debt that we're holding on our properties?
Yeah. So inflation, unfortunately, in the last couple of years has been upwards of almost 7%. Right now it's sitting around 4%. That's a problem for most people. Not a problem for us. And I say this with a bit of a chip on my shoulder, by the way, because unfortunately inflation is the silent killer for the poor. All right? Inflation, fundamentally, and this is getting a little political, and forgive me for anyone who votes Labor, our government is causing inflation. All right? It is poor government decisions, government overspending.
Printing money,
and then spending it on just dumb shit that none of us voted for. Like, at the end of the day, it's actually the government that's causing the inflation rate to be so high. Now, the reality with inflation makes the wealthier wealthier, and it makes the poor poorer. And it actually separates the gap between the wealthy and the poor.
Such an important conversation, and thank you for saying that. So let's dive into what on earth does that mean? Why is inflation good for the wealthy and not good for the poor?
At the end of the day, and to your point, and I'll give you a quick example. So when we talk about leverage, what we're really talking about is using the least amount of money to buy the biggest possible asset, and essentially we're holding on to debt.
Mm-hmm.
Inflation destroys debt over time. Now, the wealthy. So when we think about guys like, say, Elon Musk, right? And this is quite a common example I give. Elon Musk takes a salary of $1 from Tesla. Now, the reason why he does that is because he knows he's a wealthy person. He knows that income tax is the highest tax you're going to pay. So why the hell would I ever want to have an income tax, right? So he has an income of $1. Now, his remuneration is via options in stock ownership of the companies that he owns, at certain rates with certain thresholds and target that he's got to meet. But basically, his trillions or almost trillions of dollars worth of net worth is literally in holding the asset value. So it's not real money. Mm-hmm. In fact, if we were to assume that the stock market was all fake, it's all fake money. Technically,
it honestly gets to that point when we understand the mechanics of it all.
Exactly. Now, I use that term a little bluntly, and I would also say as a little side note that the entire banking system is a Ponzi scheme, but that's another podcast. But the point is like, because the wealthy, and so what Elon Musk does, right? So he'll go to the bank and say, "Hey, bank, I want to borrow $10 million." Let's say. The bank will say, "Well, okay, well, what assets have you got to secure this?" "I've got all of my assets in Tesla and this and that and the other." Because it's worth billions and billions and billions of dollars, borrowing $10 million is like borrowing $1 for us from the bank. Like, it's nothing. So of course it's approved, no worries. Let's say it takes Elon a year to go and spend that $10 million. So what that means, at the end of that year, he's just spent $10 million for the year. So almost $1 million a month. He's having a good life. At the end of the year, he actually has now $10 million of extra debt. Mm-hmm. So he's now assuming a higher level of debt. So he's got more debt he's now responsible for. But the point is, his assets and the shares that he owns is worth tens of billions of dollars more.
Right.
So he's spent 10 mil, living the dream. He's worth tens of billions more. He is substantially wealthier. That is how the wealthy live. That's how they operate. That's how the idea that the wealthy have billions in a savings account is an illusion. It is a myth. That is not how this works. It's an ownership in assets, right? Now, the reason why inflation is a tool for the wealthy is because inflation, while it pushes up the prices of everything, properties, groceries, eggs, everything, it also deflates or devalues the debt. So let me give you a little thought experiment here. So let's say we went back in a time machine to 1970. Median house price in Perth was $15,000. Keep in mind, in the 70s, the fringes were Belmont.
Right.
Right. So just for context.
Can we have a few of those fringe properties now?
100%, right? So that's like an inner city in Perth now because of the way we've sprawled, right? So and just for context, if we had gone back and bought that house in Belmont
Right.
for $15,000, today we own that exact same house. It's worth $1 million plus. And imagine we've been paying interest only the entire time. So we have not paid a single dollar off that debt. That debt is still the full mortgage of $15,000 today.
Yeah.
The tenant would have that debt paid off in about 7 months.
Exactly.
Themselves.
I remember you speaking to this point, a decade ago, and once I was starting to really understand what debt can do in terms and what inflation will do to your debt. That $15K now, okay, it was the full value of the property. Well, today, you would laugh at that. You're like, it's only got $15K of debt, of mortgage on it.
I wish all my houses had 15 grand worth of debt.
Yeah. Yes.
But that's the problem is.
And without inflation, prices would stay the same. And so everything would still be worth $15K, right? And it would still feel like you've got a full mortgage there. But no, because of inflation, that is actually to the advantage of those who carry good debt.
Correct. And this is why the wealthy and the poor, that gap will never stop, right? See, let's say you've got a $10 million portfolio, right?
Working on it.
If that $10 million portfolio is going to get pushed up by inflation, say at 5%, you're making 5% now, technically, on that 10 mil. The poor aren't holding assets. So when inflation grows at that same 5%, everything's getting 5% more expensive for them, and they don't have any assets to offset that. Mm-hmm. So while the distinction is, and again, just to really beat this point home, the number one rule of money is assets instead of income. And when you're holding onto the assets, letting inflation do the work, letting the tenant do the work, letting the mechanics of property just grow over time, versus if you act and operate with the same behavior patterns as what the poor do, and they just focus on income with no assets, inflation will destroy you. And it is. That's why every 3 or 4 weeks we see on the news them complaining about inflation.
Right. And all the sort of fear-mongering around it, well, it's real life to those who are so affected by it. And we can't combat inflation. Like, we can't decide how to keep it at that level and what the government's spending on it. We don't have that power. But what we do have power is, okay, how to actually play the monetary system, the way that it's designed. So rather than just going into what they potentially want for us, is that fear-based, stay in your lane, focus on making more money, you need to work harder, keep making more money, and rightfully so, people are getting frustrated. But my message is, okay, rather than doing that and rather than getting angry and annoyed and frustrated, where is your power? Where does your power lie? We're powerful beings. Mm-hmm. We're smart, incredible creatures. What can we do? How can we dig ourselves down a different avenue, and not only for ourselves, but for our families, our kids? And, before I get to the last few questions, how important is, you've got kids,
yep.
Wife and kids, and that idea of generational wealth. And people have different opinions on this, because some people believe, well, I made it, I did it, so my kids can figure it out too. And I would say my view lies somewhere in the middle. Mm-hmm. I'm teaching my kids about investing, and I'm, helping them succeed. But I also do think that the gap's getting wider.
Yep,
that the gap is getting wider between the wealthier and those that don't have.
Yep.
And so that's going to become more and more tangible. So people who are waiting for property prices to become more affordable, what are we waiting for? You're waiting for something that isn't going to happen. It's not going to look the same as it did in the last generation. So we really need to act now. We need to move now and be thinking about, for our children, it may not be possible for them to be homeowners. Just this idea that we all deserve to own a home. Well, in some countries they actually don't. They're priced out of the market and they rent their whole life. So, how much does that play a part in your own portfolio and your own sort of decisions, and potentially what sorts of information you're passing on to, or you will be? Your kids are little, they're a few years old, right? So, but does that play a role in feeling like, okay, it's my duty to actually pave the way here for the next generation?
Yeah, good call. So I'm actually conflicting with this right now, by the way. So this is an internal.
Do they get nothing, or do they get something, or do they get it all? Like, where are you sitting on that scale?
I'm having a tug of war internally. Now, the first thing to keep in mind, like I said about my backstory, the fire that was lit up under me was a reaction to lack of, as a kid, right? And so, like, to be fair, I've built a life running away from what I was running away from as a kid.
Yeah.
right? And you look at the outcome of where I'm at, that's just what I've done, right? Whether it's conscious or unconscious, most is unconscious.
Well, I mean, it's the classic success story.
Correct,
is
right.
You know, you come from a situation we either move towards pleasure or away from pain,
Correct.
and away from pain is a much more motivating factor.
Big time.
Right. So how are we going to instill that?
Exactly. And so with my kids, so my wife's Filipino, and so she, you know, like where her family came from, we went to Philippines last month. Very different life to what was here, and we talk about this all the time. Like my kids who are half Filipino, who are already starting out, born into a family that are multimillionaires, the way that they're raised is completely different to the way that I was raised. And this is why I'm conflicting, because in one hand, I've worked so hard to give my kids more than what I had. In the other hand, if I give them, they're not going to learn, and they're not going to actually. So here's where I'm at right now. And this is just my current.
And you've got a few years to figure it out. Your eldest is 3?
3.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we've got a few years to figure this out.
So there's actually a bit of a funny photo from Shaquille O'Neal, saw it a little while ago, and he jokes around with his kids. It's like, no, me and your mum are rich. You guys aren't rich.
Yeah.
And I love that. And that's kind of what I've taken on. And so, you know, even now, my daughter, so she wants to get the latest doll or makeup or whatever she wants. She's already doing chores to get that now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so she's 3 years old. She was doing this when she was 2. She wants to go and get something. It's like, well, you got to earn that, just like how I had to earn it. Because if I give it to you, you're not going to learn anything. Now, the way I see it at the moment, and I've said this to my parents, I want them to enjoy what they've made and built. I don't need anything, right? So you guys just go and blow it. I'm probably not going to do that with my kids, but what I am going to do is I'm going to teach them to become multimillionaires before they're 30, just like what I did, so that I don't have to give them anything because they're going to do it for themselves. That's where I'm at at the moment. And so, like I said, this has been a conflicting tug of war from what I had, but that's kind of where I'm at now. Like, if I don't make their life hard, and if I don't make them learn it themselves and I just give it to them, then they become one of those spoiled trust fund. You know how that goes.
Well, and I think the pursuit of greatness is a lot of satisfaction. Hence why I keep, starting another business even when I don't need to, is because that pursuit of meaning and the pursuit of creating something is that's human nature. So I can resonate with that too. And even for my son who's 10, we've already started teaching him about investing, and he asks about the properties and the share we've started a little share portfolio for him, just so when he gets money, he has somewhere to put it and he can watch what happens in the market to teach them the skills of becoming an investor.
Love it.
And I believe that they love it when they understand it. And if we can show them it's a game, there are levers to pull, to play. You can play this game too. Their motivation to go out and earn and then deploy that money into the asset base, that's going to be far greater than just getting handed, something on your 18th birthday. So Absolutely. I love that so much.
I love it.
All right. So a couple of last questions to wrap up. Everyone who comes on to this podcast, I believe that by hearing what you're investing in, what your portfolio looks like, where are you at today, where are you going towards, like whether it's specific numbers or how many properties have you got, what are you currently doing with investing? Yeah.
So my current property portfolio is worth about 10 mil. I've got about debt of about 5 mil, so about 5 mil in equity. Now most of my stuff's in development. So like I was sort of saying before, phase 1 in the strategy that I teach is, phase 1's growth, residential. Phase 2, we get into high cash flow. So we want to start offsetting the cash flow and then eventually getting into developments. At the end of the day, the way I see it, all roads lead to property development. That's where we're going. That's the future. You need a lot of capital to get into that though. So there is one project we're doing in Kmart. Bought it for 1.6 last year. There's about 300 grand in civils. We're going to spend about just over 2 mil on the 3 two-story houses, but they'll be worth 2.1 on completion. So the idea is we've walked into this site with $1 million. We'll walk out with 2.3. So we're now making millions of dollars over a 2-year period.
Incredible.
We've got 5 of those on right now.
5 of those going right now.
So we're doing 5 different ones in different spots.
There you go. Congratulations.
We've just started a new development company. So Dan, who's helping run that, so he's essentially running all the projects as a development manager. So that is pretty much where most of my personal investment's happening right now. I'm very close to getting my AFSL, so I'll be able to actually run syndicates for clients. So we'll be able to start a syndicate, get 10 investors, 100 grand each.
Let me know when.
Exactly.
Give me a call.
We can go find sites, develop it for them, and just, they make all the profits. So that's pretty much what we're doing now.
Incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that. So the last thing that I want to ask you is, for anyone listening, I love to get in the mindset of a multimillionaire, a self-made specifically. Is it a particular trait, characteristic, a strategy, a moment? What is it? What was it that took you from, the boy who had to decide between, do I get the new sneakers or does mum have the money? Took you from there to sitting right here today with the $10 million portfolio?
One of my mentors said to me, and this is something that I think about all the time. Keep in mind, he didn't think of this, he was told this. The only thing in life that makes a difference is action. Now, what's probably an important question to ask is why people don't take action, whether it's uncomfortable, whether it's fear, whether it's they've got too much information and can't make a decision. Fill in the blank of excuse. The only difference between where you are and where you want to be is the actions that you're going to take. That's it. So if you just then focus on just taking relentless action every single day towards your goal, success becomes inevitable. It's just now a matter of time. And notice how often we want to procrastinate on that action. And it's the only thing that we really should be doing. And like you said at the beginning, buying that house and making a mistake was actually a better, I'm glad I did that than just sit on the sidelines. Because that not only sure it was a mistake, but I've learnt more things and I'm now a better person for that. But the point is, if I had just stopped and waited or wait till I was comfortable, you're never going to be comfortable, guys. You're never going to feel like it's now the safe time to do things. It's never going to happen. It's all irrelevant. That's just a story we tell ourselves. Action is the only thing between where you're at and where you're going to be. That's it.
Gosh, I love that. And myself, I say people ask, how did you get success so quickly? And I'm like, bold action.
Bold action.
Or having the audacity and just actually moving on it.
Yep.
Incredible. Well, thank you so much for joining us. So for the people listening, I know women have loved this conversation and they're thinking, all right, sounds great. I want to get started in property, maybe deploy some equity. How do they get in touch with you? How does the process start? Where can they find you? Website? Where do you want them to go?
So our website, motivateproperty.com.au, our Instagram, Facebook, feel free to reach out to us on any of the platforms. Our team will have a chat. We'll just sort of assess your situation, see if we can help, and if we can, we'll help you.
Incredible. Let me know when that new company starts as well.
Absolutely.
We're going to be in an investing year. So we invest sort of every other year.
Yep.
And next financial year, we're going to be ready to rock and roll.
Love it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Corey. Honestly, this conversation has been so valuable for our listeners. This is my why, having these real honest conversations to really break down and demystify how wealth is actually made. So thank you so much for joining me today. And stay tuned for the next episode of the Millionaires Are Made podcast. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Mish.
Thanks, Corey.
Appreciate you.